A little background on William Anthony Nericcio. Is it Nericcio or
Nericcio?
Nericcio. Okay. Is a Chicano literary theorist, cultural critic, American literature scholar, and professor of English and comparative literature at San Diego State University. He received his BA in English from the University of Texas at Austin in 1984, then went on to complete his doctoral degree in comparative literature from Cornell in 1989. His dissertation was titled The Politics of Solitude, Alienation in the Literature of the Americas. Since fall 2009, he has been the director of the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences, right? That's a Liberal Arts and Sciences Malas program, yeah. The director of Malas.
I am the director of Malas.
That's great. I like how that sounds.
Malas, Malas, Malas. That's good.
He also serves on the faculties of Chicano Studies, the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences, and the Center for Latin American Studies. His work, as those of you who are familiar with his book have seen, focuses on Chicano literature and film, Mexican-American cultural studies, continental philosophy, psychoanalysis, and global popular culture. Apart from TexMex, Seductive Hallucinations of the Mexican in America, which, by the way, won the award for Best Title by the American Library Association, which I thought was awesome, an awesome detail. He has 2 other books published, and he is working on his follow-up book to TexMex, of which I think this talk is a part,
I'll
right?
get to it, yes.
Yeah, Eyegiene, Permutations of Subjectivity in the Televisual Age of Sex and Race. And in the Border Consciousness class, the graduate students are reading the TexMex books and presenting on that work. And so I thought it would be awesome to invite him to campus and, you know, delight us in all of your permutations of the televisual blah, 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 and everything else that you say. Thank you, William. Come on up. It's a mouthful.
I know.
But I love
I'm
it.
sorry.
I know. I love it. Are you kidding?
Wow. I'm so thrilled to be here. I wanted to lecture at UCLA since I came out to the West Coast. To be here at the Chicano Research Center, it thrills me. My first publication, real publication in film studies, came about because Chon Noriega picked my essay on Touch of Evil, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, and he put it in his book with the University of Minnesota Press. It's supposed to ring if you steal a book. It rang if she came in. She's bringing a book into the library. So he published it in Chicanos in Film, and so the ALA really did give TexMex an award, actually, not for the title, but for being a film studies book. Mala suerte. I'll get to these in a second. If there's any prop I don't get to during the lecture, and you wonder why it's there, just ask me. It's just, you know, my lectures are a form of improvisation, and you are as much responsible for any success or failure that I have as I am, because I feed off you. And you know, if I start hearing the coughs, you know, like while I'm reading, I'll just pick up one of the props. But if there's any specific prop that you're interested in, they all have a backstory. They're all connected to my work. I am a very famous Chicano curator. My family says I'm a hoarder, but you know, I like to think of myself as a curator. And so I'm going to be sharing a lot of my artifacts with you. I did bring some of my works to sell if you're interested. I edited a book on Steinbeck as a California writer. I have a book on Oliver Mayer, my good friend at USC, his collected early works that I edited. Those are my edited editions, and I brought some TexMex, and they're all available for discount. Anyone who buys a book, get this, you get 2 free prints, 2 of my free Mextasy prints that I usually sell at outrageous prices because I'm an artist, you know. I'm an artist, so I sell them. But for you, because we're in Chicanolandia, in Bruinlandia, I got the special rascuache, you know, pulga deal on the side for my peeps, okay? So I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. And I do take. I'm a high-tech Aztec. I do take. I do take credit cards. I got my little swiper here. So. Swiping, no swiping. All right. So today I'm going to talk to you about metamorphosis. As I said, as I began with, it means a lot to me to be speaking here. At the heart of Chon Noriega Landia, because he, through luck, fortuitous luck, set me on a path towards film studies. I'm a comparatist. I'm a Latin Americanist trained in 20th century Latin American literature. But what I found very quickly teaching on the East Coast at the University of Connecticut was that before you could teach the wonderful writings of Garcia Marquez, Carlos Fuentes, Elena Poniatowska, numerous other writers, you had to deal with all the crap that East Coast American students were bringing into the classroom, in their heads, in their suitcases, all the crap they had about Mexicans and about Latinos in general. Not that they ever distinguished between the two. At Cornell, I was Puerto Riqueño, so just go figure. My Boricua friends get a big laugh out of that. And so before I could write or publish, and I did start publishing, pieces on Octavio Paz and other Latin American writers, I found myself in the classroom grappling with the hesitancy of East Coast American college students to the idea of the Latino intellectual, of the Mexican intellectual, of the Chicano intellectual. And as a Chicano, Mexican, Tejano intellectual, card-carrying intellectual, I had to deal with that. So I became a cultural studies professor. And it happened over 20 years. It took me 16 years to publish TexMex. Hold on. Let's see all my props, and I forgot to. I got to read from this thing. Oh no, thank you. 16 years to find an editor, because my works were not academic. I mean, I was schooled in the East Coast, right? Worked with Jonathan Culler, Wolfgang Holdheim, Edgar Rosenberg, and a host of other comparatists of note. Cynthia Chase. Maybe later you ask me about Cynthia Chase. I got a story. And so I thought I had my credentials, but I didn't. I didn't, because my writing was not academic enough. It had jokes. It had pictures. Professors don't do jokes. Professors don't do pictures. I was telling Rebecca when I got here that my first year at San Diego State University, where I moved in 1991, having left the University of Connecticut, the secretarial staff would not reproduce my syllabi because they had too many pictures. English professors don't have pictures on their syllabi. That's just strange. That's bizarre. So I had to go to Kinko's before class and Xerox my own syllabi because I had learned how to do design through mash up and paste up. I used to take Xeroxes and just smash them together and create these syllabi that read like broadsheets, trying to get my students interested in literature. For me, it was a no-brainer. I'd grown up on Mad Magazine, Archie Comics. And so my grandmother, Ana Juarez, God rest her soul, used to keep all of the comics. Those of you who have read TexMex, you know that my sister and I would sneak into her bedroom and she hid her comics under the mattress because even she, my grandmother, Ana Juarez, thought that comic books were, you can't be advertising that you're reading these pieces of crap. And so we would break in or sneak in after she made us lunch, and we would all, three of us, jump into her bed, and I learned to read on my grandmother's bed on 619 Mier in Laredo, Texas, reading Archie and Sad Sack and Big Lotta, Little Dot, Richie Rich. I didn't understand. Later I became a Marxist and I understood that Richie Rich was a front man for the bourgeois American hegemony. But then when I was a kid, I just thought he was funny. Like I had a Dalmatian and Richie Rich's Dalmatian had dollar signs. I thought that was like, wow, that's cool, Richie Rich. Sell out. Macho. Anyway, so I learned to read through these things. My mind has always been suffused and kind of inbred with this semiotic miasma of images. And I try to bring it in my writing, to my writing. TexMex took 16 years to publish. If Theresa May at the University of Texas Press had not received my manuscript, I'd still be an unpublished associate or assistant professor at San Diego State University. And she just got it. UT Press just got me. They got the book. And they published it. And you know, thank the publishing gods. You know, Thoth, the god of Thoth. You know, I genuflect to you because the book's still selling well. And some very weird things have happened. And the weirdest thing that has happened is that now the book has turned or converted, you know, like something out of Kafka. It's morphed into this. It's morphed into Mextasy. Now, Mextasy is a traveling, curated museum exhibition based on TexMex. Because most of the artifacts, there's over 200 illustrations in the book. It's weird in academe for that. It's got a color signature. That's my grandmother, Anna, right here. It's just very strange that it has so many pictures. Those of you who want to publish semiotic focused works, you know, go to UT because they're not scared of images. A lot of university presses, they're just so scared of lawsuits. I know University of Indiana Press, just to name names. I had to pay $600 for 2 prints of Rita Hayworth in the original version of my Rita Hayworth essay that appears in TexMex. And that's just, I mean, for an academic, you know, this is crazy. Especially, yeah, bad joke. So TexMex, which is all about the construction of the textualization of specific versions of Mexicanicity for consumption by American mass culture, morphs into Mextasy, which is a traveling exhibit. And the exhibit has, this is not really the exhibit, by the way, this is just one of my stupid graphic mashups, okay? This is not from an actual exhibition of I wish, you know, that I could get this kind of gallery. Look at the floors, the parquet floors. That's a little too high societe for me, man. Mextasy is not just a repetition of TexMex. What happened was 2 curators in McAllen, Texas, Rebecca Brown was one of them. They invited me, they called me out of the blue, and Rebecca's friend had liked TexMex on Facebook. So I owe Zuckerberg part of my fame. I don't think he needs the money. A friend of hers liked TexMex. She saw that her friend liked it and said, "What's that weird book with the tortillas on the cover? These are tortillas and a tortilla de harina with scalpels and a buzzsaw." That's Lisa Tremaine's design. It's not my design. She bought the book because her friend liked it on Facebook. She read it. And the week that she was reading the book, 5 Mexican artists from San Miguel de Allende had their works kidnapped or held hostage at the McAllen border. They were the exhibits were disappeared, and they were being held hostage. And so McAllen didn't have an exhibition, and she called me and said, "Have you ever thought of making your book into an exhibition?" And I said, "No." And then she said, "We'll only be able to pay you $3,000. And I said, "Yes." I said, "What?" Usually when an academic gives a lecture or something, you know, we're lucky to get hotel, a couple of $100, you know, but $3,000. You have to remember, I'm, you know, working class from Laredo, Texas. So I'm there like, $3,000 for, and this is stuff my wife and kids call my crap, right? You know, this stuff, this festooned all around my office. You know, I've kind of converted your library here into a version of my office with all this stuff. So it worked. And the exhibit is now traveling. It hasn't been to UCLA yet, hint, hint, hint. But it will be, I think it's going to be at UC in the spring. It's going to be at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana in the spring. It's been in Michigan, Ohio State, University of Colorado, University of Washington. It's traveled all over the country. And what's wonderful about this museumification of a book is that people who don't like critical theory, they can walk through the exhibit. Not everybody likes to read post-structuralist-laced literary theory by Americans badly interpreting bad translations of French intellectuals. I know it's hard for some of us in this room to believe, but not everybody likes to read it. So walking through the exhibit is kind of a painless way of dealing with the inner workings of TexMex. Let me stop here and I'll just read to you a little piece from TexMex that deals with Speedy Gonzalez. The internet is my friend. Oh, there's the old one. I actually own this one. I'll leave it there. Because Speedy, you know, went through like a eugenics transformation in the hands of Fritz Freleng. This is the original Speedy Gonzalez before he becomes the Academy Award-winning Speedy Gonzalez from 1955 in the hands of Fritz Freleng. A.K.A. Isadora Freleng, A.K.A. I Freleng, A.K.A. Yitzhak Freleng. His name metamorphosis is a Jewish-American animator who Warner Brothers forced to closet himself, and his name is an interesting part of the Speedy Gonzalez backstory. But Speedy's original incarnation was a kind of, you know, morenito ratoncito, and he kind of got eugenicized, bleached over the years into the Speedy that we're more familiar with here. You know, a little more different. Anyway, let me just read to you just a tiny bit from the Speedy chapter. I know some of the students here were forced to read it, so maybe I can find a way to make it less painful. It's hard in graduate school. You got to read so much. Professors were so cruel, right? You know it. I think I will read to you the part about Fritz Freleng because it's interesting. Usually, I know at the early moments of ethnic studies, we had a lot of. We had what Gayatri Spivak calls it strategic essentialism. We had a lot of work to do. We had to basically create a field. And for a while, we mainly focused on narratives that foregrounded our victimage. And that's important. That's an important part of the Mexican experience in the space of the United States. But as we move on now, 2013, you know, movimiento and post-movimiento analyses in cultural studies, what I tried to do in TexMex was to move a little forward and see how in the United States all of the different subcategories and categories are interacting with each other in ways that affect the trajectory of ethnic history. And so I thought it very curious that, you know, Speedy, I could have very easily written a piece on Speedy Gonzalez. Warner Brothers bad. Speedy, not real Mexican. Speedy bad. Look, Speedy and his friends live in the trash. They're always drunk. And I could have written that piece in my sleep. And to a certain extent, that was the first version of my essay. But I also grew up with Warner Brother cartoons. I love Fritz Freleng. I love the Pink Panther. I think their animators were geniuses. And so I had to write a piece that would do justice to my offendedness at seeing the mass cultural representation of Mexican and Mexican Americans being this vato with his marihuana friends and drunk friends. Oh, and I had to write about it in a way that wouldn't make me Señor Puritano, you know, having had some experience with alcohol and marijuana and all those nice things. I didn't want to write a piece saying, you know, Warner Brothers, you hate the Mexicans. So anyway, this is what I tried to do, and I'll just read a few passages from this. I just draw somebody I know. I think of these animated figures as living characters. That's Isadora Freeling, a.k.a. I. Freeling, a.k.a. Fritz Freeling, on the animator's craft. Isadora I. Fritz Freeling never suffered from, I gotta read the other, I'm sorry, I gotta read the other epigraph. It's theory, so forgive me, okay? It's my other guru, Jacques Derrida, from his memoirs for Paul de Man. I just love mixing Fritz Freeling with Jacques Derrida. I think, you know, that if I had made any contribution to cultural studies, it's like, it's putting old Fritz with Jacques. I've never known how to tell a story. And since I love nothing better than remembering and memory itself, I've always felt this inability a sad infirmity. Why am I denied narration? Why have I not received this gift? The gift, Doron, of mnemosiny. Is it mnemosiny? Socrates insists, is like the wax in which all that we wish to guard in our memory is engraved in relief, so that it may leave a mark. And that was a real telling confession by Derrida. And just a few years later in this book that I think I brought, this book, which is my favorite book by Jacques Derrida. This is Memoirs of the Blind. Great book. The Louvre calls up Jacques, you know, Jacques, hello, right? We need you to curate a show. And Jacques says, sure. What do I do it on? They say you can do it on anything you want. And so Jacques Derrida goes to the Louvre and he curates a show on how all these people through history, famous artists, have drawn pictures of blind people. This perfect Derrida, right? Let me curate a show of art representing blind people. That's just perfect Derrida. In the book, he echoes this line here where he's saying, like, I don't know how to tell a story. Why am I denied narration? But in that book, he says, I can't draw worth a shit. My brother was always a better artist, and it plagued my life to know that I could only do philosophy when what I really wanted to do was to do art. So now we come back to Isadora Fritz Freeling. Sorry for all the prefacing. My God. Too many footnotes. Isadora I. Fritz Freeling never suffered from Jacques Derrida's debility, his stated impotence when it comes to telling a story. Yet he and the storied guru of our post-structural moment do share some curious overlaps that it might be beneficial to consider. We will deal with Freeling and his fictional living characters at length below. Yet we should not hurry too much here, lest we ignore the mother, father, inventor of deconstruction's salient confession of an inexplicable congenital condition, a pathology that leaves the afflicted philosopher, quote, not knowing how to tell a story. This guy who wrote like 100 books doesn't know how to tell a story? Give me a break. Give me a break. Now his enemies, right, would say, oh yeah, I agree. He can't write for shit. He can't tell a story to save his life. But I thought the stories he had to tell in the 80s and 90s changed American intellectual history and certainly changed the trajectory of my life. We will dawdle here a moment as said confession regarding narrative and memory relates to our concern with stereotypes. I was, in my book, was trying to bring it back to stereotypes. As it were, Derrida's parable, and paradoxically, it's a parable about not being able to weave parables, which appears at the head of his lyrical dirge to the late Paul de Man, may be read as a Bildungsroman of deconstruction, and by extension, of post-structuralist theory in general. In this microtale, presented cannily in the guise of a confession of an inability to tell a story, deconstruction reveals its other self beneath a mask of sorts. Deconstruction is nothing more and nothing less than a surrogate, or tellingly, a prosthesis for storytelling. Prolific Derrida, unable to tell a story. And so, after this mind-boggling introduction, I segue into this dissection of Isadora Fritz Freeling. You know, he's handed this ratoncito, this one. Right? This is my most cherished new artifact, given to me by one of my graduate students. It's a Speedy Christmas ornament, I think from the early 60s. Very, very precious. Don't steal it, okay? When I give talks, I still give talks in high schools and middle schools, you know, and I gotta watch my artifacts because they might walk off. Actually, one of my Speedies got stolen, but I'll tell you that during Q&A. Isadora Freeling, as I said earlier, they give him this task: remake Speedy. He's not a very popular cartoon. He's not a very popular character. And what he does is he makes him into a kind of folk hero. I mean, Speedy, in Fritz Freeling's hands, becomes a successful thief, you know, a Robin Hood with a Mexican accent, courtesy of Mel Blanc, and a charming personality, and he always wins. He always wins. He always defeats New Yorker Pussygato Sylvester. He always defeats his challengers. So he becomes a kind of the potential is there in Speedy's character to become a kind of a folk hero of sorts. In my work, I've tried to complicate the origins of Speedy to show how his development in the hands of ethnic American animators at a largely corporate American studio, Warner Brothers, contributes to a kind of lasting popular memory of a specific sort of Mexican and American mass culture. And to a certain extent, this story that I've tried to tell about him has been relatively successful. The most popular exhibits in the Mextasy show are the Speedy Gonzalez exhibits. And the reason he's the most popular is he's the most recognizable, he's the most distributed. Just 2 years ago, in 2012 summer, British Telecom adopted Speedy Gonzalez to be their spokesperson for British internet services because he's fast. And so he's alive today, 2012, 2013, as a global corporate embodiment of a certain kind of charming speed. He represents speed. You know, I mean, Paul Virilio would probably have a lot to say about Speedy Gonzalez, but that's for another time. Okay. Let me show you some more pictures. This is supposed to be a picture show. This is something for later. This is the latest music video by Arcade Fire called Reflector, which represents my latest work that appears in my latest work called Eyegiene. This is before the TexMex became Mextasy. TexMex had become a blog. And this is the TexMex gallery blog. You could see now, since November 23rd, 2006, there have been close to 600,000 visitors. And usually my audience get really excited for me about that, and I don't get very excited because when you click on this, it takes you to a website that tells you why people have been coming to the website, and invariably, if you click on these links, this is called a spider. I have a spider hidden on my website so I can see why people visit my website. Invariably, they're looking for naked chulo this, naked Latina that. In other words, the TexMex gallery blog, which I view to be the avatar of cutting-edge cultural studies, is actually a clearinghouse for cheap pornography of Latinos and Latinas. So don't get too excited when you see that number. But the TexMex gallery blog was a place a blog then, 2007, was a very exciting thing, because while I talk a lot about films in TexMex, obviously, unless I had one of those drawings, in the pages where you actually make a film, you can't have a film in a book. And so the blog allowed me to post scenes from Touch of Evil, from Speedy Gonzalez, and if you do searches on the website, you can. This really is a clearing, a kind of electronic resource book for TexMex, the book. Almost all of the artifacts written about and spoken about in TexMex, the book, are illuminated at greater length on the blog. Now, about 2 or 3 years ago, I stopped writing new stuff for the blog. Mostly my blog just repeats stuff I stumble across that pertains to Rita Hayworth, to Orson Welles, to the border, to films about the border, to border studies, to Latino cultural studies, and then, of course, the one that never runs out, and not just because of Jan Brewer, that is Latino Stereotypes. And so the TexMex Gallery blog is a place where I indict all kinds of stereotypes that I run across. And in the last 6 years, it's, courtesy of Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and all the haters, it's been open season on Mexicans again. And once again, we have to worry if we have our IDs. We have to worry when we go to Tucson, we enter Arizona. This is actually one of my artifacts from the show, from the Mextasy show. This is a work of art, right? This is called Jan Brewer's swimming pool warning sign, or something like that, right? And in the show, usually there's one of those sleeping Mexicans here in the center, actually inside of the space of caution. But the blog was an amazingly useful tool, and I use the past tense a little bit because blogs are year 2000s right now. We've got Tumblrs, we've got Twitter. I don't think I'll ever master Twittering. It's just, it's too much like crystal meth, it's just like, it's always updating itself. It's just too fast. Blogs, they're like Dickensian, and you luxuriate in their poignancy. So the blog was a place that I could augment the book. And actually, in the early stages, in 2008 and 2009, I published a fair amount of responses and critiques of chapters in the book, which was a more remarkable thing for a scholar. The second you finish a piece, you begin to find all the problems with your writing. And so I started using the blog as a place to critique elements of the book, including the Speedy chapter, because I stumbled across an episode of Speedy Gonzalez that featured Slowpoke Rodriguez that kind of undermined a lot of my argument in the TexMex book. So I wrote a kind of apologia to Fritz Freleng about his foresight. I was only half kidding. But so TexMex, from the first week that it was published, actually about 2 months before it was published, was a blog, and then it was a book, and then it was Mextasy, the traveling exhibition. So a lot of what I've been doing is just reacting to reactions to the book, which is a great thing for an author, and it's a unique thing for a professor. It's one of the things that we professors have over regular authors who do book tours at Barnes and Noble and stuff, though we know in our hearts we want to do those, we want to do those. But still, the book is an extension of our teaching. This book came out of my work at San Diego State, my work at the University of Connecticut, and parts of it, my graduate work at Cornell. And to have it still living electronically in blogs, in a Twitter feed, on a Facebook page, is a remarkable tool for a scholar, and we have to do it, especially those of us in the humanities, because we risk rendering ourselves obsolete. And hence the subtitle of this presentation, right, is the mouthful, right? From TexMex to Mextasy to Eyegiene, televisually supercharged hallucinations of Mexicans in our digital humanities-laced Technosexually Voyeuristic Tomorrows. And what I've put together here in this ridiculous title, which I apologize for warmly, are all of the elements of my present scholarship. I wrote TexMex, which is Seductive Hallucinations of Mexicans, and you can see in the second part of the title, they're still there. But now they're televisually supercharged, because the book that I now owe to UT Press, and it's a year and a half late, I swear I'm going to finish it, Eyegiene, has a subtitle which is Permutations of Subjectivity in the Televisual Age of Sex and Race. And that largely is a book that takes the methodology of TexMex, which was wholly focused on Mexicanos and Chicanos and Latinos in American mass culture, and it opens up its field of view. There are chapters on graphic narrative, on comic books. Grandma Anna's hand is still there in my eye, you know, directing me what to write about. There's a chapter on Pee Wee Herman and the whole scandal associated with his being caught, shall we say, touching himself in a motion picture theater. And I returned to the scene of the crime. Latex gloves on hand to exhume the controversy and rethink not just what happened that fair day in that dark room, but what happened afterwards. And it's a revision of an essay I published back in the day in I think the Iowa Journal of Cultural Studies, and it's called Theorists Watching Critics, Watching Journalists, Watching Sheriffs, Watching Pee Wee Watch. And that chapter is all about the manufacture of sex scandals. So when I say televisually supercharged, I'm alluding to a forthcoming volume, Eyegiene. The idea of a televisual ontology is really a central part of the book, and it's actually part of an attempt to theorize the movement from a television-based mass culture to a smartphone-based mass culture. And that explains why the digital humanities is lurking there in the title. I'm now charged as the director of the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences program at San Diego State with working with a cohort of professors from across San Diego County, from UCSD, from San Diego State, and from Cal State University San Marcos, to imagine what the contours of the digital humanities are. And this is all driven by a sneaking suspicion in the hearts and minds of deans and administrators that there's money to be had there, that the humanities can rise from the ashes, because we're just ashes now, aren't we all? Bullshit. That we will rise from the ashes and once again secure massive funding so they can do what they do, these deans. You know, are there any deans present? No. Love you, love the deans. Do not. Okay. So I'm still today, because I'm looking at the evolution of my work from TexMex to Eyegiene, from TexMex to Mextasy to Eyegiene. I'm always writing about Mexicans. I'm always writing about through Mexicans, because I am one, and and the scare quotes will always be around the Mexican, right? One, because we're scary. We're scary Mexicans. But because Mexicans always already, enter into the space of American discourse with a charge, with a valence. We've been valorized, we've been valued, and in order to contest it, we have to be outsized. We have to be as large as our ridiculers. We have to be as bombastic at times as Limbaugh, but in another direction and in another way, with another kind of ethos, with another kind of vision. A large part of what I do is is not just an analysis of American mass culture. It's an attempt to write it like a sick wave, as they would say in San Diego. A sick wave, that wave was sick. A gnarly sick wave. Because otherwise we will not be listened to. We will be left in the dust. This move to understand the metamorphosis of the Mexican stereotype into the world of the smartphone, into apps, into online streaming videos, and the like, is something to witness. And what just went down at the University of Texas in the last 3 days with this attempt by the conservatives of Texas, run by a Tejano Republican, to go chase and capture illegal, fake or ersatz illegal immigrants on the UT campus is an example of a social media spread mob activity that feeds off of old, almost 19th century lynching parties that were de rigueur in Texas. I remember in 1980, when I was a freshman, it was 80, actually it would have been 81. It would have been the spring semester of my freshman year at the University of Texas. I stood on Speedway, and those of you who've been in Austin know the drag right in front of campus is called Speedway Avenue, I think, the drag. And I witnessed a sorority fraternity extravaganza parade that featured a float that recreated the Plantation South. And that was sort of my introduction to racism as festival. The festival of racism in Central Texas, part of Texas's legacy, that I was to a certain extent insulated from in Laredo, because you know the Rangers just didn't get too far south of San Antonio. They got south of San Antonio, but then they started running into landowners, Mexican landowners, and so Texas itself is just a bizarre space that I return to time and again. And it's just a long way of saying I'm always going to be talking about Mexicans. Let me show you something from Mextasy. No. Let's go here. If you're interested in any of these images, just do a Google search for Mextasy. I've thrown so much of this stuff up on the web, and I've tagged it in a way that Google finds it really easily. So you can basically survey my entire exhibit just by putting the word Mextasy into a Google image browser. One of the proudest things, I shouldn't be proud of this, but I am. I said that I was a curator, but I'm actually a hoarder. And for years I collected, and I still collect because people send them to me, you know, artifacts of Mexicanicity. This is something I found just a year ago for $3 at a thrift shop in San Diego. And it's actually wonderful. It's a Cantinflas doll, probably from the 40s. And I'm sure it's worth like billions of dollars on Mexico eBay, but I haven't looked it up because I'm not going to sell him. But I don't just collect Mexicans. What happened is I went a little sick in the head, and I started collecting Caucasian artifacts. And this was my first one. Hollywood Santa White for all white shoes. Excellent, excellent. New plastic bottle shadow. And I just started collecting these bizarre artifacts that I call the Caucasian bestiary as a kind of tonic, a kind of existential, I don't know, expiation. I try to lighten the soul by doing unto others as they had been done unto me. And there's nothing legitimate about this action, and it's hardly scientific. But I do find that this Caucasian bestiary, it's actually one of the most visited sites on the Mextasy blog, and people also now have begun to send me artifacts from that. So, Mextasy. Here's an example of. I mean, this is an example of some of the stuff I do in Mextasy. I repurpose advertising that I clip and find from the 50s. And I add it to my digital art that already is a ripoff. You know, Warhol was the ace ripoff artist of the 20th century, and I thought, who better to steal from than Warhol? And so this is actually a compilation piece. This piece here is in the Mextasy show, and I think it's called Primo de Warhol or something. You know, I try to give these Magritte fancy titles to my ridiculous works. But what I've been doing increasingly lately is incorporating ads featuring Caucasians from the 1950s into all of my advertisements. And I think what happened was the Caucasian bestiary has somehow contaminated my consciousness. But let me share to you some of the ideas behind the Mextasy exhibit. How am I doing on time? Do I have like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes? People? What time are we supposed to go to? 5?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so we can have plenty of time for discussion afterwards.
All right. In the past, in the present, and in the near future, the image of the Mexican in the American imagination has been, is, and will be a monster. Not a monster like Frankenstein, Mothra, the Mummy, or Godzilla, but a monster in the strict sense of the term, as in the Latin monstrantia, a demonstration or a proof. Mexico, Mexicans, Hispanics, Latinos, Latinas, Chicanos, Chicanas, and Mexican Americans, just to name a few, as monstrous figures that prove their own monstrosity. Mextasy, the exhibition, wants to be a cure for all this. And it is a strange cure, to be sure. Very strange. It's like an optic existential syringe that fills your eye with pathology and an antidote. And better still, an optic pill. It's both disease and remedy. Mextasy is a catalog of atrocious stereotypes pretending to be representations of Mexican peoples. That's why those scary, nasty, useful scare quotes appear around the word Mexican here, to underscore the pretending nature of these grotesque representations. It was really important for me in Mextasy to get past the obsessive sadness and tragedy of TexMex. The tragedy being a 20th century American popular culture dedicated to repeating these retrograde representations of Americans of Mexican descent and Mexicanos. And so Mextasy was going to be something else. And I combined my 3 ecstasies, or my 3 working understandings of the word ecstasy, right? And the first one comes from sex and pornography. Ecstasy is probably the most overused word in erotic marketing in the United States. Imagine the ecstasy of it all, right? Tune in tomorrow for the ecstasy. And so ecstasy is a word that is always already overlaced with sexual potentiality. But then there was the other ecstasy, and that's from the 1980s. That was a little drug called MDMA that blew the minds of my generation because it was legal and exchanged and used, like Coca-Cola among some sets of undergraduates at the University of Texas and at Cornell University. And the wonderful thing about... Am I causing some flashbacks? MDMA was a wonderful drug developed by psychiatrists and psychotherapists to allow people who had affective disorders to communicate. That is, MDMA, ecstasy, was developed before it was a street drug, before it was the drug of choice for raves. It was a drug that was developed to let people love each other and tell each other how they feel, because we're incompetents when it comes to talking about our feelings, most of us. So it was a great drug. It had some bad side effects, though. It wiped your memory, sometimes permanently, and it gave you a smile hangover, because you smile so much when you're on MDMA that you can feel it for a couple of days in your cheeks. So Mextasy wanted to contain somehow, it already contained, because in TexMex I argue that Mexico becomes a synecdoche, a shorthand for sexuality in the space of American mass culture. So the sex ecstasy was already there in Mextasy. And the ecstasy, the idea of a kind of transformation of affect through an experience with art, was also going to be part of the Mextasy show. But the last part of it is the ecstasy I know from my, at lunch today with the graduate students, we were all confessing our stories of experiences with nuns, with monjas. And so Mextasy, ecstasy, was going to be the third ecstasy, which is the Catholic ecstasy. And Catholic liturgy, I was a good altar boy, 13 years Catholic school. I knew that ecstasy was the word used to represent your highest shared experience with God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It is a moment of nirvana, if you'll allow me to mix archetypes, architropes. Ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy, was a moment of transformation as we indulge in some spiritual communion or commingling with higher spiritual forces, and we're changed forever in the community of spirit. So because I was a recovering Catholic, that had to be part of Mextasy also. The fact that a lot of Mexican Americans and a lot of the Mexican artifacts that I collect happen to be shadowed by the hangover of the Catholic experience. So Mextasy is all three of those things. And the show, which is now traveling, tries to embody the intoxication of the drug experience of ecstasy, the sexual transformation of pleasure associated with, sexual ecstasy, and the spiritual connection also, the idea of an ecstasy that is part and process of your metamorphosis. And I don't know if the show does all that. The show has three parts. The first parts are artifacts, stereotypes of Mexicans, and some of the Caucasian bestiary stuff also, which are very popular in the show as well. The second part of the show are my graphic works, and I brought a bunch of them here today, and you're welcome to look at them after the presentation, a couple of minutes. And the third part of the show that I'm most proud of, and that gives me great Mextasy, is that I'm a curator now for reals, and that the last part of the show includes artists from Southern California, Latino and Latina artists, and then when I travel, I try to get local artists to contribute contributions to the show so that the local communities will be represented in the Mextasy exhibition. We're out of time, but I will say that the work that will end this trifecta of cultural studies works should appear before the end of next year with the University of Texas Press. It is Eyegiene. This is part of the cover, if I can clear the rights for it. Permutations of Subjectivity in the Television Age of Sex and Race. It's got chapters on graphic narrative, Pee Wee Herman, Mandingo and Django Unchained, and Sleep Dealer by Alex Rivera. Very works that challenge not just our understanding of the space of the Latino cultural body politic, but a move more generally into understanding the madness of the American body politic. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody have a question, comment? Sounds like y'all had an interesting lunch. Y'all want to tell us a little bit about what went on?
Any questions? Yes. Hi.
So for your exhibition, do you have to descriptions next to the pieces?
Yes, didactics. Yes.
Are they like in those descriptions, like they don't? Do you feel like it does justice to it, or is it just to like?
I'll be honest. For the first exhibition, I wrote some of them, and I was so uncomfortable writing didactics from my own art that I asked the curators in McAllen at the South Texas Museum of Art to help me with it. So they wrote some of them. I wrote some of them. Because the exhibit changes with each staging, I'm always adding stuff. Like the last exhibit in Michigan at Adrian College, I added this. You ever seen those Kodak picture plaques? Like Kodak's telling you if you stand here, you'll get a good picture. They have them in Disneyland in places. Mm-hmm. Well, in Mextasy now they have a Kodak picture place. And it's right with a Roman Catholic kneeler. And so what you're supposed to do is kneel and with your camera and then take a picture of your friend. And over here is an ironing board with a mannequin wearing a maid's dress. And it's next to my exhibit on Mexican maids and American mass culture. And so you're supposed to exercise the demon of the stereotype by taking your picture of it. So I'm trying to get interactive. And I wrote that didactic because I wanted people to actually do it. And it was only after that I thought, oh, I should have had them post it with hashtags because I'm 50. I don't know hashtags, So that's new school. And so, but for the next staging in University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, I'm going to have that so that people will. I won't even want to have an iPad if I can hook it with a chain so that people can take pictures and post them. with the hashtag. And the whole idea is to exercise this idea of the Mexican maid, though with devious maids being brought back for a second season, they're not going anywhere. You know, they're reconstituting these ads. But that's a very good question. I'm kind of embarrassed writing my own didactics. What I really dream of doing is shipping the show to a real museum and just letting them go for it. You know, because a third of the works in the exhibit are my art, and I shouldn't be commenting on my own art. It's like I'm telling you what it means. It's crazy. But then I'm not really an artist. I'm a professor, right? So I break character and I tell people what I mean. Like most of the show is mounted on old throwaway Mexican newspapers from Tijuana. And the reason I mounted the entire show on newspapers is because stereotypes, like newspapers used to be, because they're going away, right? I still love my newspaper. They're ephemeral, but they're ubiquitous. That is, they go away, but they're always there. It's like stereotypes. They're like lingua franca. They're like they're cultural artifacts of natural selection that survive and evolve and never go away. And so for me, it was important to foreground all of the works on this ephemera. At the University of Washington, we mounted the entire show in the Ethnic Studies Center, and we mounted it on the glass windows that faced out to the city. And it was such a desmadre. It looked like they were remodeling or something, because from the outside, all you saw was all this newspaper in Spanish. But when you walked inside, you had the exhibit. It was sort of, I liked that. I was really proud of that one. That was extraordinary. I wonder what the UCLA show will look like. I'm not quite sure. Yes, hi.
You know, I'm so glad that you came in and gave a talk. Your presentation was as animated as your book.
Oh.
And I totally agree with you about UT Press. I published with UT Press as well. They really do get a lot of, you know, the work that's going on, the cultural studies work. Otro también. I have actually two questions. One is, you know, this is such a great methodology for a scholarship, for cultural studies scholarship, where you're not just doing the theoretical work, you're not just putting the words on the page, but you're also bringing the objects that you're discussing and putting them as much as you can into a two-dimensional format. And then through your exhibit, through the blog, through your presentations, then you make it more three-dimensional and it all comes alive. Now, this would seem to me a great methodology by which to teach graduate students, and I'm not sure if you actually teach this methodology to your students.
My graduate students will walk into the seminar room, and the table will look like this. And in front of each of them, if we're doing, you know, depending on what we're doing, there will be, I've done this before, where there will be this artifacts. At the presentation I gave at NYU, it was actually around a table, and most of these artifacts were around the table so that each participant had an artifact in front of them, and you know, that became part of the discussion. So yes, I do this my teaching, all of my classes. I can show you my class right now. This is my syllabus, Naked Mirrors. There it is. This is the syllabus for my class. They enter the class. The class is called Naked Mirrors, Damaged Psyche. It's an introduction to literature, and so they enter the class through this portal, and the portal is one of Magritte's most famous paintings. And why I picked it is throughout the class I mix literature with art, and this is the Magritte painting that features the short stories of Edgar Allan Poe. And so this is a painter reflecting on literature and adding to layers of meaning in his painting by incorporating literature. So then, as you can see, there are different parts of the class. This is just the course description, but you know, the rules of the class are called the class passport, because once you enter my classroom, you've entered a bizarre new world. The diary tells them what they have to do on a day-to-day basis, and because it's called Naked Mirrors, you have to click on the naked jumping people to get to the latest assignment. So we were doing Chuck Palahniuk last week, and this week my TAs today did Frida Kahlo for me, and I'm doing Frida on Thursday. But it's a mesh of art and stuff, and the class is not just, you know, an online syllabus. It has a social dimension because we have a we have a class Facebook page where people post stuff, right? This is an artist, this is a student who did a portrait of the main character from Invisible Monsters, so she posts it and then people comment. And there's also a Tumblr site where the students are free to, this was just posted today by one of my students, Destroy What Destroys You, which is one of the ethos ideas central to Paula Nick's Invisible Monsters. So I do, my teaching and my scholarship they are just a mess. Yeah. But it's only recently that I thought seriously about what I do as a curatorship. And I joke about it, but there is, I'm up to something. I don't control it all. A lot of it is serendipity, but I do like it to be painless for the students. And so I try to keep it moving, because they're not English majors. It's a lower division GE class. So yes, I do bring actual artifacts into graduate seminars. It's important.
My second question was, as a Tejano fronterizo, teaching, on the California border, and bringing your Tejano border consciousness to California, have you found it kind of like what Burciaga called a mixed marriage, where he said he was from Texas and his wife was from California?
Oh, it is. It took me 16 years to stand San Diego. I was so unhappy. I was on the job market 10 out of those 16 years. I was like at MLA, they see me coming, Eyegiene, I don't know how many campus interviews I could never get out of San Diego State. And now is kind of a blessing, because after I was chair of English, which was a big desmadre. It was beautiful, but it was also just guerra, war. It's so conservative over there. Now I got malas, I got my own thing. People leave me alone, and I just do my madness there at SDSU. And the students, God love them. I still have a pretty good reputation with the undergraduates and the graduate students, so the teaching is good. But California, for a Tejano, San Diego, it's balkanized. You've got the Mexicans in the south, you got the Ricos up in Del Mar and La Jolla. It's less so now, because it's the Central Core is going through a gentrification, but also a renaissance in terms of the arts. North Park, Hillcrest, South Park, exploding. So San Diego's vibrant with its arts community, but for a few years there, I hated it. And I hated it not because it wasn't San Diego's fault, it was my fault. Because I thought like an idiot when I left UConn that I was coming home to the border. And I was not coming home to the border. Califas is not sur de Texas. That's not good, that's not bad. They are distinct cultural spaces. And, but now, I don't know if I could go back to Laredo. 120 degrees, la canícula. No puedo. Now I'm spoiled, Give me San Diego. Go Chargers,
And in many ways, the work that you're doing is Californiaized as well.
Yes, I have been Californicated.
I didn't say that.
No, but I have. It's true. I do feel I've been heavily influenced by TJ and by LA. And by Bay Area artists, and I could see it in the work, But occasionally those Whataburger Laredo flashes will come in. The Laredense. You can take the boy out of Laredo.
Right.
But anyway, thank you. Otto first, and then Daniel.
I was just going to ask about it says ask me anything. Do you have any particular questions that the undergrads bring up with that? Because I wanted to see how they respond, particularly the San Diego.
To this?
To
the
this
class? It's very funny. It's 270 students. I have 272 students. I have 3 GTAs. The first week there were 310 students because they were trying to crash. By the end of the second week, we were down to 262, and those people stayed. So, and then there were 15 people more people left because 15 people crashed because their friends brought them. So the initial reaction is shock. Oh my God, we have to do the reading because my kids, they don't read the book, they fail the quizzes because I'm a hard ass. And so the slackers leave, the rest stay. Some of them just gut it out and they hate it, but the majority, they're very positive. I had this one assignment where I was mad at the English department for some pendejada that they had done to me. So my assignment to one of my classes was they had to take a quote from the book we were reading. It was Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions that they loved, and they had to find a place in the English department's hallways and plaster it. They had to design stuff on it like literary tagging, like graffiti. And so the entire hallway for one day was filled with it, and then one of the support staff from the 6th floor called in a complaint. And it's funny, they ripped them down so quickly that they destroyed the paint. And so the trace of my students' tagging is still there. No, the students are in SDSU are remarkable. They really our students will rise to anything we ask of them because they're so bored. Especially in the general education classes, so many of our colleagues just phone it in, and so they phone it in, and everybody's just in this vicious cycle of mediocrity. And so what I try to do is like, man, I worked with Fuentes, I knew Eddie Said, I knew all these people, I gotta go in and blow their minds. Or, like when Fuentes died, I remember the next day lecturing, maybe the next week, but I remember walking into a lecture and saying, I gotta do honor to that beautiful ghost, because he changed my life. And so the way we honor the beautiful ghosts, which are the teachers that made us teachers, is we teach at another level. And so I just try to bring it. And it's exhausting, and it means I don't write as much as other folks. But that's okay, because now I got Mextasy, and I get to play with pictures and show you my toys. This is the future. This is an example of Eyegiene. You know, this is Junot Díaz's book that opened to great reviews, great sales, but this is a special edition, hardcover. I haven't even opened it yet. Yeah, it's still in its condom here. This is a special edition of This Is How You Lose Her by Junot Díaz, illustrated by Gilbert Hernandez, the Love and Rockets Chicano graphic narrative dude. So this, and Junot just digs comics. He loves the brothers Hernandez. So when he got the chance to collaborate with Gilbert, now, Junot is cutting-edge American lit. That he's seeking out comic book artists to do special editions of his fiction is just an example of the metamorphosis of American literature in the 21st century as we embrace our inner, our inner Gutenberg. The old illustrated manuscripts of yore are returning as books, and some of them are electronic on our iPads. Right? The electronic book is just a kind of electric version of the illuminated manuscripts, which were, of course, words with visual indexes on the page to tell you how to read the words. They were instructions in pictures. And we think we're cutting edge. We're just Neo-Gutenberg. I mean, Neo-illuminated manuscripts. But this is the future. Not just this is not Latino literature now. This is American literature now, because this thing is selling like hotcakes. It's a limited special edition slip-cased hardcover book by who is it? Riverhead Books. Junot Díaz. This Is How You Lose Her. And I would teach it this spring, but it's like $38. You know, only tenured professors can afford that. You can't do that to the kids. Yes, Daniel.
I'm curious about when you work with graduate students and on their dissertations, are you encouraging them to?
I don't. Oh, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay.
I only supervised dissertations at the University of Connecticut for 30 years. San Diego State has no PhD program in the humanities.
Okay. Well.
But I do supervise master's theses,
Okay,
so let's take it down a notch and
let's
ask the
take it down.
question.
So then you're encouraging, I assume, your students to explore and use not just text in what they're writing, but also bringing in art and other.
Yeah. Malas is unique in that regard because we allow projects and theses in our master's program. So we had a woman who did a thesis on the psychology of sea mammals because she worked 16 years at SeaWorld with orcas and dolphins, and she knew all their inner secrets. They're sort of little horny animals, these sea creatures. We have filmmakers. We have musicians. Anders Larson, who's I think applying to UCLA. Be on the lookout. Yeah. Any UCLA lit profs here? Anyway, if Anders Larson sends in something, look for him. He's brilliant. He just finished a thesis on the history of the evolution of the LP, of the album, and album cover art in American culture, 1940 to 1973, something like that. And we've had documentary films. We have a woman who actually her thesis is she came up with a curriculum for teaching art in elementary school classrooms. Because MALAS supports interdisciplinary studies, our majors come from all disciplines, and so their theses are all different. Yeah.
And do the other professors kind of see this and wonder what the hell, what is this? This is kind of
No, that's what would happen in English. There was very little buy-in from the Department of English, some, but very little, because the predominantly thoughtful people were pre-tenure assistant professors who really couldn't have a voice because they were exposing themselves to retributive decisions on tenure calls. There was resistance. In MALAS, only professors who want to do interdisciplinary studies contact me and affiliate with me through the college. And so it's a sign-on at will program. So the professors love it and get it. And we have professors from film, from theater. We have a new professor coming in from biology because it's Master of Arts and Liberal Arts and Sciences. So because we're doing a neurotext cognitive humanities class right now that's being team taught by a brain researcher from Scripps with a Wisconsin PhD in literature. We get all kinds of folks.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I want to go back to
Oh, well, it's a good time to be a graduate student in San Diego. At least it's a good program. I'm very proud of it. Yes. Hey, Keith.
I'm curious, within, the insight, clearly in the creativity and the passion and the leadership that you're providing inside of this space, how can this methodology touch other avenues of, for lack of a better word, power and influence, such that it can possibly have some effect, such as, politics, business, entertainment?
All I can say is I try. I'm doing an interview for National Public Radio on Wednesday. I try to put my ideas out into the blogosphere, the electronic ethosphere, but it's incredibly difficult. That question's very frustrating because it's hard to have an in. I tried for 2 years, from 2007 to 2010, 3 years, to get on the Daily Show and on Colbert. It's just, I couldn't even get through to a producer who can make a call. And I have connections. I mean, I have 1 degree of separation connections, but it's just not interesting, or it just, no, we'll get back to you. And so I don't want to be the, me hicieron, but they hurt me, but it's just really difficult to get an in to a venue nationally where your ideas can make an impact. The life of the public intellectual in the 21st century is maddening. And it's so fleeting, because if you do get a hit, like there were weeks back in the day in the 2010 where the TexMex gallery blog, I was getting like close to 2,000 people a week, which was a lot. Now it's down to like, 400. People don't even read blogs anymore. They don't have time for Twitter, or their Instagram. And so, frustration, but I'll tell you how I get rid of my frustration. I'm going back to working with middle school and high school kids. SDSU brought in 500 LA and San Diego County 10th graders to campus last Friday, and I gave them a version of this talk. A little bit more on the smartphones and the videos than I shared with you guys, sorry. But I know you missed out. But that is always powerful, because they need us. They need those of us who can teach. We need to be doing assemblies. We need to be, going out to their schools. Looks like I'll be going out to Compton soon, to do an assembly. And so I used to do those works when I first moved to San Diego County from, I don't know, from 91 to like 98 or so. But then I started raising my own kids. But now my son's at SLO at San Luis Obispo, and my daughter's just going to be a senior, and I just feel I have more time now to move back into the classrooms. But I'm just a teacher, you know, and so I'm not meant for the, you know, cameras. I love classrooms. If you ever seen a professor, you ever watched a lecture that you've been at that has been filmed? Hi, I just want to say hello to you. I appreciate it. But, you know, sometimes it's excruciating. It's professors on TV, you know, it's not going to sell in Poughkeepsie. Put in some special effects, you know. Put like a retro frame around it or something. All right. Any other questions or comments? I appreciate you so much for coming here and taking your time to figure this out. Yes.
Well, my name's Leonard. I teach in the community college level, and I came through UCLA. So it's really kind of cool to see some familiar faces here. And I came just to see you because you're my Facebook friend. And but your methodology. Yeah, we're so close.
One of the 3,000.
Yeah. But your methodology really is really exciting. It's cool, and it's a comment also, you know, on your methodology, which really works at the community college level. I really dig this type of
I lecture there.
Bringing it in, and I'm wrapping up a PhD in the culture and performance here.
Oh, cool.
So I had to mix starting a very history undergrad, Chicano studies, and then going into performance studies, and it's taking a weird turn. So I really think it works tremendously to bring a lot of these points home. I like that you say we got to get away from that victimization, because I teach the Chicano film class, and one way to do that is I bring in real historical things like the ads for Pear soap at the turn of the century and White Man's Burden, to really understand how we get the genesis of this idea of not only Mexicans, but it started with others.
Oh, filthy swarthiness.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to whiten the world through soap and battleships. And then we'll go and see a film, you know, something based on a historical time period. So that really works. I just want to report that the methodology that you employ works. Now, I want to like engage in a semiosis of your semiotics. I understand the 50s America imagery that you pull from. I have an idea why you use it, but I'd like to just get, you know, see like why is that so important? Why is 50s white America important to you?
Oh, because it's the baseline. You know, I say I was raised by nuns, but I was raised also by a television set, you know, Gilligan's Island after school. This is one of my more recent works. And this is what you're talking about, right? Yeah, but this is actually like 61, 62, but I get the point. Most of my works are all about, you know, I'm a child of Magritte, honoring the frame and exploding the frame. And so when I recontextualize images, and I do it at multiple levels, like this is a pastiche. There's a website that lets you put whatever you want into a tableau of graffiti on a bulletin board. So I dropped through the computer into a graphic that I had constructed that was an ad for a show I did at Ohio State. I may have been the one with you even, or maybe the one before. And so even within this frame, you can see me telling you where to look. And a large part of my work is asking people to not take Mexicans at face value, to see, like Fritz Freleng. Fritz Freleng gave us Speedy. So I want you to see the hand of Freleng, so you understand that Speedy is a textile. He's a mesh of fabrics that has been woven by someone and sold and profited off of. And so I think because I started collecting the Caucasian bestiary, I love print culture of the 50s and 60s, the texture of comic books and magazines. And so that's just part of my aesthetic. I love that. But the idea that these these gabachos are always on the periphery, looking at mextatic works, is a repositioning. Because usually in the original ad, they're looking at a box of Tide. They're looking at a candy bar. You know, for Halloween, I found this cool trick-or-treat image, and I repurposed it, and I turned the lady from a, it was great because she was handing out whole candy bars, like the whole, not the little ones, right? The whole Milky Way. But she was handing out Mextasy in my revisioning of her. And so, let me see if it comes up. No, that's not me. I'm not Henry Trevino. He stole TexMex. Son of a gun. How could he? I'm going to get in touch with that guy. You stole it. I heard you. There. Well, even like for this show, this was one of the ads I pasted around the internet, you know, trying to hype this show. And this guy's, these two are my favorite lately. I put them in almost everything I'm doing. I love this guy because he's like this middle-aged, you know, Don Draper's rich uncle or something, right? Yeah, he's a suit, and he's pondering. But what he's pondering is the talk I just gave to you, right? And she's digging it. And then Vato with the pipes digging it. And then the old soap ad lady, she's telling you, you know, that it's the CRSC because I had to give you guys, you know, some love, right? CSRC, right? So she's pointing to how to get in contact with you guys. And it's all laughs, right? Just having a laugh. But it's more than that because as I do in my classes, I want to sensitize audiences to the power of the frame, that context is all, and that we ourselves are placed in certain contexts that need to be questioned. And so I do the same thing with the work. Like this, I stole this from SDSU. This is something I use with the high school students, trying to teach them that reading a poem is not so difficult. They just have to think of a word like this. And I go, what is this? And they say, it's a warning sign. And I say, where do you see it? And they say, on the highway. And I say, what do you do when you're driving and you see this in the street? You turn away from it. How did you know that? Well, because you know you're going to break your car, you know, like you idiot. And I'm there, yes, but you know it from context and experience. But there's nothing to stop this from being a megaphone, right? Hello. Right? Or if I'm being nasty, I can go R-rated, right? Or a codpiece, right? Or a dunce cap, right? Or a Madonna bra, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that a floating signifier can become in different contexts. Now, you're talking to kids about things like this, and they go, oh, because it frustrates them that poems have interpretable readings. And it frustrates them more that their stupid teachers tell them that they're wrong, which is what a lot of literature teachers do. They just go, oh, that's wrong, right, with their nose in the air, and it just turns off a whole generation of literature. Why? Because literature is revolutionary, because it's powerful. And so we can't have that in our populace, so we kill the arts. We kill literature courses. We kill music courses. We kill theater courses. Why? Because they breed independent thinking, and that hurts the consumer. I mean, the bottom line, consumer purchases. So anyway, I don't know how I got started on that, but yes, that's why they're there. They are there because they're ever watchful, they're always interested, and they're slightly hysterical. Their desire for the product is borderline compulsive. Like, whoosh, she really wants to be at the talk, right? He's really pondering. And I love that in the ads, because the ads were not subtle. They were like, you know, old Mad Men era advertising was meant to move you into the store. And so I guess that, I wish I had the power to conjure original images that would get people to rethink semiotics in that way. But I don't, so I rip it off. And my excuse is the age. No, it's not easy. It's the age of the mashup, you know. So, yeah.
A very quick second
Sure.
part of that is the comic books. You being in San Diego with Comic-Con over there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a big fan too. But I was wondering what your thoughts on are things like Pride of Baghdad or Scalped or the DMZ. I mean, there's really cutting-edge comics out there that are got really biting social commentary.
I don't know those.
Oh, okay.
I'm out of the loop. I'm not actively collecting right now. I'm in a state of stasis. This is one of my newer ones. I'm trying to put together the ideas of Eyegiene with Mextasy, reflecting back. So this is an old poster that I'd ripped off of Salma Hayek doing a Campari ad. And now, I've already used that before, but it reappears in this new repurposed ad. Do your eyes need help? Our eyes always need help. Our eyes always need an assist, and not from just these, you know. Though I need these now too, because I'm getting old. You know. Any other questions? If you have to leave, it's okay. You don't have to stay here. Yes.
I'm just curious to know what you were going to do with the Arcade Fire video, because it's a band that I sort of love to hate but hate to love, because I feel that they're very hipster and sort of too much for me.
I'm a recovering hipster from Austin, Texas.
Yeah, no,
I'm Reflector, that particular video, the lyrics and the subject matter of the video are basically a summary of my entire class this semester. Naked Mirrors, Damaged Psyche. It's called Reflector, and it features the band members wearing these outsized paper mache style heads, being chased around by a man that is a mirror man. And so the lyrics of this song are about that these days we are just a reflection of a reflection of a reflection of a reflection. Basically, you know, they're doing a riff off of Baudrillard and Borges. And it's visually it's a stunning video, I think. And it's in black and white. And I had just taught Touch of Evil, and of course my undergraduates were griping, oh, it's black and white, I don't like black and white. And I'm there, hey, look, Arcade Fire's doing black and white, I said, you know.
So you're telling me to give them a second chance?
Give that video a second look.
Okay.
I don't care what you think about the band. That video is important.
Okay.
You know?
Who directed it?
That's a good question. Don't know. The person who directed their last video on the suburbs was Spike Jonze, who's one of my favorite directors, being John Malkovich and Where the Wild Things Are. I don't know who the director for this one is. It's probably why I didn't show it, because someone's going to ask me that question, and then I don't know. That's a very important thing. Those of you who are going to be teachers or are teachers, if you don't know something, just say, I don't know. It's really empowering in a classroom to let them know that.
They Google it real fast.
No, I don't let them use smartphones. Any other questions? Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you. If any of you are interested, I do have books and prints for sale.